Thank you so much. So I'm Camilo Soler. I'm a lecturer in design in Kingston University, in creative industries at King's College, and I'll be the moderator for today's sessions. Today's session is part of a larger performance by artist Andoro del Trueno and Andrés, who are working on bringing together the ritual into the performance and vice versa. We're going to go there in a second. So I'm also accompanied by Tere Chadwick, leading artist of Neo Norte in its 5th edition this year, if I'm correct, and Estrella Sendra, lecturer in festivals at King's College London. Rather than expanding a lot on who, like reading a CV for the four of us, we decided to do a different introduction today. And we would like to do our introductions via objects. So that's why we have some objects around the floor. And perhaps what I would like to do is to invite Andrés to start with his object and perhaps tell us a little bit about who he is through that.
Yeah, so this is a reed pipe from Los Andes. Usually we have it in another shape, which you may be more familiar with, like these long reed pipes. We designed this with Andoro as a prototype for ones that are bigger, but in a circular shape, trying to convey the idea of circular idea of time, which is very Andean kind of ideology. Also remembers the sun, and it relates to my practice as a sound artist and a musician, which I've been developing since I have memory, actually. For us as artists from the Andes, it's very important to understand the music as a way to connect with the holy. So it's not just a way for entertainment, but it works in a much more complex way. So with reed pipes, each reed pipe has like a mission in a way. Some of them works through the rainy season, some other works for the sunny season or dry season, as it's called. And in this case, we made this specifically for a performance that we're gonna do next days, called La Campaxi, which idea is to help people to connect with their breath and go into a meditative state of mind, which is the other thing I've been exploring the last 10 years, how music can get you in a deeply hypnotic, meditative state, altering your perception of time and disconnecting you from this complex noise we live in daily basis. So that's what my work is around.
Nice, thank you. Andoro, you want to advance?
Well, thank you and good evening to all of you. We come from Bolivia, and we have been doing this work, and specifically the project Samka, which means the delirium, like the concept of the delirium in Aymara. The delirium understand as a space of encounter between everything I can remember and everything I can dream of in a single moment. So I think this is like the starting point for us, because we came to offer these spaces of encounter of times, of people. Hello, welcome. Yeah. And speaking about time, I have bring this tari. Well, this is a fabric that calls aguayo, very familiar for all the Andean people. But it became satari the moment that you put something valuable inside. So here it can goes from food to their sons, their daughters. I think, well, we as a Bolivians, there are here a few too, we have been all charged in one of these when we were babies. And so I decided to put inside a photograph. Well, this also, this aguayo has like a lot of meanings also in several Andean communities. It's sacred, so there has been a beautiful project that led by Cristina Buba many years ago, where she had to bring back the textiles to the community because the community had like the faith on them, and they used to think that they had bad luck without the textiles. So the textiles have been sold from the like the church mainly had to sell the textiles, and they brought it back to the community. So they made a huge party and festivity to receive them. So that's how important this fabric is. And normally also they can be they can be read. They are as texts. They translate their story in this fabric. So you have several ways to read it. Normally these are the roads of life, and so you're gonna put inside the road whatever you feel or your story is. Those are the stairs to heaven, so you can connect with heaven or you can connect with earth. So there has a lot of symbolism in one fabric. Also, there's a community, for example, I'm extending a lot, but also there's a community that they made this fabric from their fears, from what they fear. So they believe that when you draw your fears and you wear them in a certain way, they disappear, like it's gone already. So whatever I have brought this image inside, that this is a piece that we made like 5 years ago with a community, and actually it's yeah, it was one of these videos, and like this picture, this circle, is what it was talking, Andrés. It's time. It's a reflection about time, where everything is cycle, everything can repeat, everything moves in a cyclic way. Also, as a community, this was a performance made with this community. That what truly moved me, it was that there were a group of indigenous women that they dreamed to be actresses. So they started to assist to certain acting classes, but they were during the day they were like in commerce or selling in their things, or they were in their old towns, and then they wanted to be actresses. So we worked with them, Las Corihuarmis, and they were beautiful. So I tried to like make this new kind of rituals. I think one of the things that I have experienced a lot in communities as an artist is that an artist has a direct function, a direct responsibility with their community. So we as an artist, it's not just I'm flying because I want to paint the moon, and if anything goes good, no, they have to make it rain. They have to sing a song so they can eat. I don't know, the function of the artist is crucial to the evolution of their community. So that for me, it was life-changing, and I said, like, how am I gonna make it rain for my community? How can I be functional and make my own communities evolve? So we started to create these spaces of new rituality, of new forms to connect to each other. And well, that's basically Samka and our work, artwork in a way, you know? Okay,
Yeah,
that's it.
thank you. Fantastic, thanks so much.
So the object I brought is something which is very intimate, maybe, because it's many years ago when I went to the north of Chile. I saw in a market that they were selling like this bag of just, I hope I got the right term, is sheared wool. So basically it's like just the wool that has been taken from the animal. And my brother at the time was doing weaving, so then I bought it for him as a present for Christmas. And what I like is that it's the natural color of the alpaca animal. This is one of the most expensive wools in the world, I think. Not so expensive as vicuña, but it's it's very representative from the Andes. And what for me was a very beautiful surprise, because I gave it for him for his work, but then what was very nice was that he transformed it into a scarf for me, and I always use scarves because otherwise I get cold, so I think that was very beautiful. And now, well, he has been in very poor health, so he's not weaving anymore. That's why for me it's something very precious. And but also, when we were speaking about bringing objects and doing a different kind of introduction to start a conversation, we decided that there were going to be objects responding to the idea of fabrics. Even though Lacapax is not fabric, it has lots of like pipes that somehow thread together. And the reason why we decided that was because one, I think that the fabrics is a very strong element to the Andean cultures. That's what it's about Samka Meets Neo Norte. But also Neo Norte 5, it's all about upcycling textile as a way of repairing the social fabric and mending the social fabric. So I think that it's very interesting how textile art that for years has been somehow displaced or seen like in a lower category because it's normally associated to women. I think now it has become more trendy, and even in Freeze last week there were lots of textile pieces. I was very surprised. So that's why, because we're going to be speaking about the social fabric, that's why we are all bringing fabric objects or textiles.
Hello everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you to the organizers for the invitation to join from a different part of the world and a different interest, but as a way of being part of this social fabric, which is the one that hopefully it's inviting us to rethink the world. I'm originally from the south of Spain, so during the dictatorship I had a family that left, and the one that we managed to keep in touch with are based in Mexico. I was about to bring a really beautiful fabric that I got in one of the places where I went, which was called Guajiniculapa, where there was a reinvention of some of the embroidery that they do over there with some fabrics, but in a contemporary way. But I didn't bring that because it's very cold and it's very summery as weather. And instead what I wanted to bring is the reason why I was first invited, which was to bring another kind of fabric, which is the one that tissued or waved me to a place that has become very close to my heart, which is Senegal. I'm from Sevilla, so it's not that far. Senegal, for those of you that may not know, is in West Africa. Is the place that is more located in the west of the continent. And I've brought today something really, really meaningful. We were hoping to have the artist with us, but at the moment he's in London, but he had another commitment. But he was very generous to give us this pieces when I said what I would like to bring today. And I really like how you were talking, Andoro, about this study that becomes important when you put things together, and the idea of upcycling, because this is all what much of the work that I admire in artists in Senegal is about. And I feel that in a way what we do when we reflect about fabrics is think about this sort of mise en abîme that is happening at the same time, how things become one inside the others, and as we weave them together and we intertwine them, then the story become ones that it's like that palimpsest in Egypt where there are traces of the previous story, and then there is one story that becomes that story with all of these elements, right, of all of the roads. So I want to share with you several things today. Sorry, I brought more than one object, but they are together, they are one. First of all, the one that I'm wearing, it's not a random choice. So this is a way of upcycling fabric as well. You can see several fabrics, but mainly one. And in this fabric, the designer, who is called Camilo, who is based in Dakar and is a very well-known designer that I really like. He does a lot of clothes that could be worn at the same time by men and women. He does a lot of clothes that are worn by some of the feminist artists and filmmakers that I love over there. And it has this motif that is black and white, that you can see as well in my bracelets. And that you can to some extent see as well in this printed, screen printed fabric that gives the texture to this photography. That is from a work, the photography, called Migration and Identity, which is one that as well I feel very connected to from where I'm from and from the fact that I am now based here, from somewhere else, but always in this idea of mobility and also again like these tissues that move from one place to the other. This is also a symbol of a community of Sufi people in Senegal. Most of the Muslim population over there, which makes 95% of the population in Senegal, are Sufi, are Muslim, and specifically Sufi people are the ones that feel that religion is practiced through actions and through creativity, through cultures, through art. And this is basically one of the favorite prints that they use that is also present here in this part of the fabric, that black and white that you feel is over there. And if you think about it, it's very connected as well to this idea. This is a typical patchwork in Wolof, which is the most widely spoken lingua franca in Senegal. It's called ñajas. And the idea is precisely to use those traces of fabric that may have been leftovers from other fabrics and to put them together. And that part of the process is kind of like a ritual. Most of the tailors in Senegal are men, and this is one of the clothes that this artist, Djibril Dramé, has given us to show today that he wears when he's in special occasions. But it's one that symbolizes generosity, community, and that is also one that I have in my own house and my own bed and my own clothing as well, although I didn't wear that today. Again, it's very cold here, but I do wear it in Spain and here in the summer. And it's the one that this Baifal community, Baifal means the disciples of Sheikh Ibrahim Afal, who was one of the Sufi leaders, is wearing. There is something very resistant or decolonial about this, and it also has to do with the mise-en-abîme that happens not just with tissues but also with temporalities. Very often in the case of the African continent, people think that there is the colonial period and the post-colonial period, but they forget about the very deep presence of the pre-colonial period in which there was so much spiritualism and rituals over there that convive and coexist with how religion is lived today and other forms of secular ways of living. And the helmet that this person in the photograph is wearing is a helmet that has as well the African currency, the African pieces of money that are shells. And those are used as well as a way of resistance, and it's golden, and it's a way, again, it's one of those photographs that could be interpreted in so many different ways. And I wanted to pass this around, ask you to treat it with a lot of love and care, so that you can feel the textures of these tissues. And I'm also going to pass, as I talk right now and we listen to one another, a book that I bought in a place that is very symbolic of the period of the 60s in Senegal, where there were several infrastructures that were built in order to decolonize the mines through arts and cultures. And this is a manufacturer of textiles. It's a manufacturer of like carpets that have unique designs that you can see here. Each of them have a story to tell as well. They can become new stories. So I got the book the last time that I went to visit, and I just wanted to also show it around, just to bring further temporalities here into the conversation. And I'm happy to discuss further about some of the details over there. But I just wanted to bring a piece of fabric that has become so important to me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, this is my object. It's an Amazonian basket. It's made by the Tucano-speaking peoples of what is the Northwest Amazon, or in case of Colombia, the East Amazon. Depends on your point of reference. And it's really interesting. I think this really matches the ideas that Andoro was mentioning, in which there's no artifact that is made just for aesthetic purposes. Because there's not a such thing as aesthetics. Right? Function and aesthetics come together, and there are many things could be said about this object. The way it's elaborated is very interesting because it's very mathematical. So, if any of you has ever studied topology or anything like that, or geography, you will know that when you try to understand the space mathematically, you need to come up with an algorithm in order to understand how you move throughout the space, right? And these people do that empirically. So, in order to know how you create this shape, you need to have some sort of mathematical understanding. They just do it very intuitively. They don't write it down, they don't use numbers, but they do it mathematically, otherwise this wouldn't be possible. So if you wanted to replicate this with a machine, you will need to come up with a very complicated, you need to hire a mathematician essentially. So to get a machine to get this done. So it's incredible that they do that, but also they use the basket and weaving a basket constantly as analogies for building a society or building agreements. So mostly because they perceive there's a strong analogy in the way you envision a full object and how you plan each of the steps that get that object done. So yeah, not gratuitously, they're constantly saying about, well, this basket is not going really well, we need to correct soon enough. Or this basket is not going well, we need to revise the design originally, etc. Right? So, and when they are saying that, they are talking about society generally. They are not talking about a specific basket. So that's all with my object. I'll pass it around. What I will do now is, well, first be really happy because our idea of introducing ourselves with objects worked really well. And I'm trying to interweave some of the objects that came out here. Because
hold on, we can also pass the other objects.
Yes, please. Just let's keep circulating them as things happen. Yeah, I guess for me, if anything that is very attractive of weaving and something that I've observed to be important for many people as they weave is that is very mindful. And no wonder why most of mindful practices, even in London, include some level of mindfulness. And I think that really goes to the meditative aspect that also makes Andrés's music, yeah? Because music is also intertwining a series of elements in order to lead to those meditative states. And again, when it comes to nothing more meditative than also walking in circles, as you were showing, like that performance really brought me I connected immediately the idea of meditation with the idea of walking in circles. Which again, that's an embodied movement, but when you are weaving, you are doing something that is not too different, particularly if something that is round, because you have to go round several times over and over and over. So no wonder why that takes you. And if we go along with those analogies, it definitely leads into Tere's idea of the social fabric. Yeah? So you intertwine things in order to build something out of it throughout this repetition that can be meditative, and hence why the performance is not only the performance of the object itself, but it weaves into something bigger than that. It's like a loop of something bigger. Yeah, and as you build social fabric in that performative, meditative way, I think one of the main elements that you need to be aware of is that you're putting one thing inside the other. Yeah, you are overlapping things. You are putting it next to each other. There are more complex, fabrics in which what you do is you decide which color goes on top and covers the other four that are inside, and then you pop them out at different moments. You probably know this better than I do. So yeah, that's for instance the taris are very much like that, in which this one show you that. Like these are the hidden colors, these are the shown colors, and you decide which one comes out at what moment. And I think that really is about also building that social fabric. Some things are dormant, some things are evident, and then you intertwine those in order to build something that you are originally planning. Yeah? So it's a bit of a project. And I guess on the note of the project, what I would like to take the conversation towards is mostly what let me put this in an interesting way. Well, maybe I will take Andoro on this one first. Okay. And try to think more about this idea between the ritual and the performance, which I think we discussed a little bit last time. So what is a performance and why is it different from a ritual?
Well, when I started to go to invited by these certain communities and getting involved of this wisdom and knowledge, a performance or a show just didn't fit. Especially because we make music since like years ago, and that was like pretty much entertaining, but we wanted to offer something more. Then we became with this idea about the performatic ritual. I think a performance, you can actually script it, you can actually rehearse it, you can even make a, I don't know how to say it, but como actuarlo.
Perform it.
Rehearse
like
it,
acting.
enact it. Yeah.
When you act something, when you're a theater actor, you have a lot of experience and emotions that you have to bring back and perform it to the stage. But in this case, when you make a ceremony or you make a ritual, anything and everything can happen. You have to be aware of the emotion of the other, and nothing can be rehearsed. Me, for example, as a performer, I cannot bring some emotion back and just starting to cry. No, I can't. If crying comes, crying comes. If not, if joy comes. So it's very, it has this layer of truth that maybe sometimes can be chaotic or can be not very, like not very choreographed. You can choreograph anything, but you can lead something. And that's one of the main concepts of the music in the Aymara cosmogony, that it's arca ira. Arca ira, it's a concept where one is gonna lead and the other is gonna follow. So when you are playing something, an instrument or whatever, that's why we made that La Campaxi, because you can play like a dialogue. Actually, well, this doesn't exist. We invented, but it's actually like to make it clear, like to make this point clear, because one here is gonna lead and the other one is gonna follow, and you have to connect and you have to breathe, and if one is making this, you have to start, and so we make a sound together. I think that is the main difference, that you have plural feelings, plural experiences that you bring into an artistic space, but you can control them. And you have to give them the freedom to act.
Yes. Probably I'm going to take Andrés on that as well, because one question that immediately pops up is, well, how do you do it with music, right? You'd say, yeah, music you record, so where's the intuitive, ritualistic element to it?
In music, I guess music is a vibration, right? It is some way, physically it's a vibration that goes through the air, and then it impacts you. The most primarily way of relating to it is by ear. So it impacts right in your cochlea, which is a part of the ear we have as humans, and and then there's like a translation, right? That goes into the brain. But as a sound, it impacts you in many other ways, right? In your body, for example. So when you're in these big concerts and you have like big sound systems, for example, you can feel how it has like a direct impact in your body. And it depends on the frequency, how it impacts, right? Sometimes it is in the lower parts of the body, like this area, when there's like more low frequency sounds. Higher frequency sounds impacts you more in this area. So when you talk about ritual from the Andean cultures, there's like a very intuitive, but more than intuitive, I would say like historic, because they tell this generation by generation by word. There's not so much written things, but by word. And they know really well how to manage these low, high frequency stuff to get you in a particular mood. So that's one thing, right? Frequency spectrum and how it actually develops in the human body in many levels. And the second one is repetition. So when you repeat something, there's no exact repetition of anything. So there's always a little bit of difference between one cycle and another. And then the brain, the human brain, when you repeat something one and again, it starts to understand that there's a like a pattern, similar thing coming over and over again. But at the same time, it still gets pendiente. I don't know how to say pendiente. It still needs to process the little difference.
Yeah, it's pending.
So,
like a lag.
so in a way, you relax because you are not waiting for anything new. But at the same time, the brain is still processing. So you are kind of you enter in this altered state where you are present enough, but not so much. So yeah, repetition, then frequency management of the sound. And the third is the group. So in music, it's in Andean music, it's very important to think it not as one. There's not much music done by one people, but in a community, in a troupe. And it builds the energy also, because when you see a reed pipe and the reed pipe is tuned, that's a fake one. That's like probably something made in China. The actual reed pipes, they are not tuned, because most of them had to do with the length of your hand or the length from your hand to your elbows. So they are not tuned in this do, re, mi, fa, sol, like kind of scale, right? So between one another, there's like little differences. And as he was telling us, like someone guides and then the rest follows. So they try to imitate the melody of the others, but it's never the same. It has like this very different, out of tune kind of effect that is also very persuasive for the mind and the ears. Your brain works in a really particular way when you are listening to a troupe. And when you are listening to a troupe drunk, and when you've been going into circles drunk and listening to a troupe for hours, then you start to disconnect from this daily life reality and go into this another state of mind.
Yes. Oh, thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Andrés. I will take you to Tere, because I find something really important here. How is that you are taking, well, we know that the ritual is not the performance, right? And then we know that the ritual has this element of the unexpected, but also the non-scripted. And if we take that one level up in abstraction, as Neo Norte as a project, how do you see the ritualistic playing out in Neo Norte? Or in general in art for you?
I think I'm going to quote a professor from FATEC University in Brazil, Wilton Garcia, who's helping me building up the extension course from next year in Sao Paulo.
Right.
Because actually we were having this conversation, and he's very connected to lots of like spiritual beliefs, more connected to Yoruba culture. And I was telling him that for me, because Neo Norte is not my only project as an artist, but I think it's maybe one of the strongest. And also in each of its presentations and editions, there's always a lot of emotion involved. There's a lot of passion and pain and progress, but because there's sometimes exhibitions that you kind of like show them and you don't feel a lot of that, and others that you really like, they make you change in a way. And one day I was speaking with him when we were, and I said, Wilton, I don't get it, because Neo Norte has a particularity, because it either shows me the best or the worst of people. And he said, yeah, but that's pretty obvious. And I was like, why is it pretty obvious? And then he said, yes, because basically what you're doing with Neo Norte is putting Joaquín Torres Garcia's practice into theory into practice. So for the ones who don't know who's Joaquín Torres Garcia, he was an Uruguayan artist of the 20th century, very connected to the futurist and kind of like modernist movements. And he has a manifesto which is called Escuela del Sur, or School of the South. And what he was saying that I think it's very present in not only Latin America and other cultures as well, is that basically he was saying, because for example in school, we tend to learn more about Europe than about our own region. And of course we have to learn about Europe because it's part of our culture, but because with colonization it became part of it. But then also not acknowledging our culture, I think it generates a lack of identity, and that people have a lack of self-esteem, and that we always think that everything that comes from the north is going to be superior. And I really saw the difference by being privileged enough to come to study here at Centro St. Martin's and Royal College of Art, because here I was always encouraged to be the best. I was always, and I always was given the confidence that I was going to have those opportunities. And I don't think that's what's happened in Latin America, because when you're in the educational system, immediately they tell you that you're in an underdeveloped country, that everything's going to be difficult, so that you're not going to have possibilities, and that then to have these possibilities, you either have to go to England, to Germany, to the States. And I think that, so my question with Neo Norte starts with this idea of like, which percentage of our underdevelopment is because we start with the limitations. But then I also think, and that's why I come with, or I bring Joaquín Torres Garcia's legacy, because with the Escuela del Sur, what he was saying was basically the South should be our North. And if you think that all the strongest, like the biodiversity of the world, a big percentage is in Latin America, that the young population as well, it's a strong percentage is in Latin America. I also think that the cultures that are far more connected to intuition and to the human connection in a way that we're kind of like lacking each day more with the advancement of artificial intelligence. And so, but going back to Wilton Garcia and answering your question, so that I don't kind of like get so scattered around ideas, was that he was telling me basically what you do with Neo Norte, in an energetic way, you ask people to put themselves upside down. Because basically when you try to ask them to imagine the world upside down, by bringing different practices from the global south and having this discussion, then basically you also, yourself, and you kind of like place it upside down. And that's actually an energetic process of like, and what he was telling me of that I find interesting is that the moment you try to put yourself upside down, you kind of like lose filters in a way. Because basically everything that you try to hide, it becomes unveiled. And I think that Neo Norte has a ritualistic power in the sense that it unveils what people want to hide, because immediately you're asking people to put themselves upside down.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you. Yeah, I see here that there's this. Well, we're strongly encouraging the audience to think about the intuition, right, and the power of intuition and the non-scripted. And we know that the scripted and the rational are really part of a European project, right? That's science, what's based on, and performance in the most strict sense of the word, as something that you envision and then execute. It's a very European project and associated with what some have called the Global North. Now we're proposing an alternative, and we couldn't agree that the Global South was the name for that alternative for several reasons. I mean, it took many turns. Some of them were really semiotic, some of them were really lexical. But at some point, let's say, okay, fine, that's not the word. Perhaps this is, and that's partly why I invited Estrella to jump in, because she's been doing quite a few things in West Africa, particularly Senegal, and she has worked with things that I perceive to be related to this, even though it's not the Andes, right? The idea of intuition, the idea of the non-scripted, the idea of how going with the non-scripted makes something better, right? That adds value rather than takes it off. Like things that go wrong for the scripted standards actually add value. So maybe if you could give us some norths here, some general guidances on how such project could.
No, absolutely. Thank you for your question. It was really interesting in the pandemic to take part in some of the reflections that were happening among festival organizers, particularly curators and venues. It was a time in which many of those festivals that happened at the same time were coming together for the very first time online, because in the past we may have known, oh, there is this film festival going on here and this and that, oh, what a shame, I cannot multiply myself and be in all of them. And all of a sudden the live space, despite the limitations, brought that opportunity to reflect together about the practice and unveiled so much precarity in the sector. And to me it was really surprising, well, not that surprising, but for me it was I would say more annoying, that some of the things that they were feeling that they were coming up with that were super innovative were things that I had been observing in Senegal since 2012 when I first went there and observed this degree of collaboration, of sharing human resources, of adapting much more to audiences, of being much more horizontal or diagonal or multi-directional in the way of understanding, for example, a festival space. At the beginning, this started as a response to a limitation. So say, for example, film festivals that decide to do pop-up screenings because there are no cinema venues, or there were no cinema venues back in 2012. Ever since 2017, the country has seen 4 cinema venues being built and being activated and super active. But I feel, and some of the things that I have said in my research, that has been done, that has been the result of the work done by festivals, because festivals has really managed to build an audience and build cinephilia, and those cinephiles became filmmakers that are at the same time producers and audiences of those productions and collaborators with one another. And where I want to go with all of this is that some of the aspects that I focus on in my work when I do research on festivals in Senegal and what is meant by local and international in this, and what are the connotations of international and how these words are used strategically, is that many of these projects that are community responses led by people in a very generous way who want to make an impact and have a change in their own territories, they market this as projects of territory, first and foremost for the population over there. Now, what this may mean is that there is so much unexpected. There is so much of the unexpected. And I remember when I was doing fieldwork, I really enjoy that because I am a person who doesn't get scared by the unexpected. But if you go there with the idea of there is this program and at this time this is going to happen, no way. I mean, over there, the only times that are really punctual are 2 p.m. because people have lunch in the house and they all gather there because, again, they cannot afford to do takeaway or this or that, and family is sacred and food is a way of coming together. Or like 9 p.m. again, boom. So you know that whatever is scheduled in a festival at 8:30 p.m., you know that at least it's happening at 10 or 10:30 p.m. No one is going to get angry about that or anything. It's just a matter of what are the priorities and how we work within those spaces. Yeah. And in one of the regions where I work the most, which is called Louga in the north of Senegal, which is quite rural and close to Saint Louis, and had a very crucial role in the colonial period because it was at the crossroads of Dakar and Saint Louis where the colonizers were established. So it became that point of encounter, a crossroads of capital of different kinds, a crossroads of commerce, and again, a lot of what resulted from that was intangible cultural heritage, because like in my city, Sevilla, where there is a flamenco fair, what remained from that idea of commerce and negotiating livestock was not really the livestock itself, well, which still is quite important in Louga, but it was all the marketing that you did. So all the parties, all the singing, all those rituals that you did because you cared about these sacred animals, because you wanted to appeal the attention to those people who may be buying that, right? And this has really been reinvented today and has remarketed this place, abandoned because everything is centralized in the capital, in Dakar, and has allowed people to rethink of the importance of Louga in a cultural map. So in this festival there is a performance space which is in the civic square, as it would be translated, and over there is the opening, there are the evening performances, but to me what is more interesting is all of those afternoon performances that happens in the neighborhoods. The festival is not imposing people to travel towards them. Many people cannot afford it, and at certain times it would be dangerous as well. The festival is the one that would be traveling to the population and adapting to the local way of doing things, talking to the chief of the neighborhood or the head of the neighborhood. They spread the word about it, they convoke the people to go there, to gather together. And the kind of a space is basically a circle, because that is what people are used to from baptisms, from weddings. That's how people do the party. And it doesn't become a foreign imposed or imported model from the West, let's call, understanding the West something like Europe. But it becomes much more of an embraced ritual that has to do with the community, and therefore it becomes that project of territory where the first form of endorsement comes from the population. And what matters the most is that liveness. So many performances happen at the same time in different neighborhoods. They are all different. This idea of repetition, what you were saying, like nothing can ever be repeated in the same way. And that's the value of being there, because you know that it only happened there.
Very interesting.
And you were only, you know, you had the privilege of witnessing it, of participating in such a moment.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. Thank you, Estrella. And that really takes me to what I would think would be the last question for all of us before we open the group for the floor for questions in general. But I guess it's the role of ritual. We associate rituals often, and at least we're not taught in school in that way, to people far away doing, you know, people who, very often we have this idea of the ritual versus the scientific, right? You do rituals when you don't know how the world works, so you feel better about it. You know, that's the series of ideas we are taught early in school, at least I was. So what do you think is, and now we live in cities, most of us live in a city, or close to one. So what is the role for you, could be personally, of rituals in living today in a city? And if you can recommend a ritual, that's also welcome as well. Whoever wants to join.
The artist speak.
Well, I think that's the main question of our work. Like, how are we gonna bring? Because we don't do Andean rituals properly. We're inventing as an artist through this philosophy that really makes you good as a human being. How can I that adapt to this building now at this time? Because, you know, rituality looks very normal at the end of a mountain or on a lake. But here in the streets, like, you're gonna start like just jumping and making your sounds. I don't know, maybe, and maybe it works. But I also think that we can like make just being not so literal about rituality, but instead being very inventive about it. I think one of the most beautiful things that I have experienced were those micro, little ritual between two people. Like, just, for example, we were like in this very, very long community, like there were like just 30 people and two indigenous men that used to have these churpas just like do this action like to the other one, and when the other one received it, he just kissed and hugged. And it was so little, but it was so powerful about receiving and honoring what you're receiving. So I think these kind of things, we can do it daily. And one of my main phrases or my main concepts is that here behind of this asfalto, I don't know how to say it, asphalt, the heart of the earth is still beating. You don't need to travel and go to the jungle to connect with this. So wind is for all of us, air is for all of us. That's a very beautiful concept, that why we designed this instrument too, that called samana. The samana is the breath of life, and that's why are so sacred, because they say you breathe the breath of life, like from the stars, from the origin of life. You inhale, and then something happens, and like your heart flourish, and then you exhale, and that makes sounds, and that makes vibration, and that's infinite. So those kind of things we can do very easily, just to connect with our breath, just to connect with our eyes, just to respect one another, and be conscient about community, about elements, about the spirit of everyone. Everyone has a story. Everyone is a stress. Everyone. So be like kind to one another, and I think that's what we're gonna do also in this ritual performance, that you are all invited. And because as it is a ritual, we don't believe in audiences, so we're all part, so you can come and just be part of it, feel it, breathe, come, join, jump. It's gonna be like very interesting space.
I would like
Do you
to.
want to just jump in?
I would
The
like to
images as well.
compliment something on that point, because I think that from an anthropological point of view, we all have rituals which we practice daily. Like we have like little rituals we would practice before leaving our home. For example, we'll go, I don't know, wash our teeth and check the face, take a shower, whether the face is okay, that we can go outside to the street. And those are kind of like personal rituals that we all do them in a certain way, and we all repeat them in a certain way. So if one day the toothbrush is not where it should be, it becomes an interruption to a kind of like ritual that you have every day. So I think that there's a distinguishment between like personal rituals that we all have, and also like maybe social rituals that are point of encounter. And going back to what you were saying about bringing something from a different culture into an urban space, I'm finishing a book published by the Memorial de América Latina, which was about tongues in Latin America. So each chapter speaks about different tongues. So there's one about Quechua, Aymara, some from Mexico, some from different places. And in the chapter about Guarani, they were saying something very interesting. Guarani, it's mainly Brazil, Paraguay, and some parts of the Amazon.
Bolivia.
The Amazon side, yeah. And they were saying that the USP, that's one of the big universities, important universities in Sao Paulo, they open up like a research about Guarani and whatever. And then they invited the community, but the community said, well, but we can't really study our culture in a white room like this, because our culture it has nothing to do with this white space and white walls. So they actually built up a campus with the same structure of a Guarani house to be able to study the Guarani culture, because otherwise it's totally taken like out of context. And I felt that was actually quite interesting in a way. And I do think that arts practices, as we kind of like become more digitalized every time, and life becomes so fast, and we don't have many spaces like tonight to share and have a conversation about these things. And also like, because for example, I'm a member of the Royal Society of Sculptors, and I'm probably one of the young members. And in the chat the other day, someone was saying like, how to protect yourself as an artist from artificial intelligence. And I felt like actually my point of view is how to reinvent yourself with artificial intelligence, because I don't think you can protect yourself from artificial intelligence. And that's why I think that actually as artists we have to offer experiences. And in a world that I feel that's lacking connection, I think that performance, or this way of doing like ritualistic performances, has a great power and a tool to actually offer experiences to come together as society. So I think that that's a very strong element of rituals in a way.
Yeah, Andrés, rituals.
I'm going to go back in a concept you said at the beginning, mindfulness. For me, it's about being present. I'm a very anxious person and compulsive, and I have to do like a differentiation here between being compulsive and making a ritual, right? If your toothbrush is not in the same place at the same moment every morning, and then that ruins your day, you are compulsive, you are not doing a ritual. For me, rituals are things that makes you more present, and that, as you said, Tere, let you connect with the whole, I would say, like with the whole cosmos in a way. I believe personally, it is very personal, that everything works in a very particular way, that through science we couldn't achieve like to figure out. Like, we can't figure out still how it works, but it keeps working. And I do believe that rituals are those actions that you can do to reveal a little bit of truth and connect by little instance to this more bigger font. So in a practical way, I would say the same as you both said, Tere and Andoro. First, do another differentiation. Yeah, I do think there's like personal rituals and there's community rituals. As personal, I guess feeling our breath, it's basic. Being conscious about how we are breathing, I think is a great exercise that we can do any time at any moment, and it get us back into present state. Second, looking to others in the eyes. That's a great way to connect also. I think hugging also, it's like very strong. It also gives you this great amount of oxytocin. And of course, like for me, music is key, right? So I'm constantly listening to music that brings me into this state. Probably every morning, I try to listen to some kind of ambient music so I can be more present. And then as a community, I do think like it's important to keep with these rituals that have they had an evolution through time, but they comes from this really ancient knowledge, and they repeat. And in Bolivia, it's they haven't gone anywhere. You know, they are still there, and you can participate. And it's very sad to me that so many young people now are getting disconnected from these rituals, right? For me, it's important still to being part of these rituals, to go to the communities, to dance with them, to get drunk with them, basically. And I don't know, like last year I danced at Gran Poder, which is like this big folkloric entrance. And I had this 40 kilos costume, and I got to dance for like 25 kilometers. And last 5 kilometers I don't remember because I was very drunk. And there was this huge band playing behind my back. So everything just went like this, and of course the next day I was feeling lighter. So yeah, those are the ways.
Estrella, do you want to jump in with a short remark on your rituals?
Well, I think it would be great as well to hear from the audience, because I know
we'll
we're
have
at
some time.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to kick us out anytime
Okay.
soon,
Okay.
so we'll have time for a couple of questions, and then what I propose after that is, it might be simply that we just move around the space and we ask each other, we just do like a gathering and we just talk to each other. So let's have only 2 questions open up, and then the rest we just, there's some wine, there's some snacks, so we can just move around, have some wine and chat rather than, spend all the time in questions one by one. Yeah, just.
Yeah. So for me, what I think it relates a lot to what has been said over here. I think we need to de-exoticize the word ritual, and think about those practices, those cultural practices that involve a lot of embodiment and affect, and that invite us to slow down and think about a more meaningful presence. I would also add that I really agree with that point of being present, but I think for me it's much more about meaningful forms of presence that are very much thanks to that acknowledgement of affective interdependence. And I don't want to get very academic here, but just to put an example, those kinds of things that people do, for example, in the case of Senegal, dressing up in a very nice way to celebrate beauty and dignity, but to show respect for people. And, also as a white Spanish person and woman who has been based in Senegal, or has been traveling there and spending some time there for quite some years now, I have observed this tendency of traveling to Africa with all of these safari connotations associated to that. And I remember at some point, even to some friends that came to visit, I was like, could you please make sure you bring here some of those, I know how they dress, I was like, could you bring here some sort of like long dresses that you would wear for a wedding? And they were like, huh? And then even though I had warned them about the fact that they had to dress up really nice and everything, they still came with this sort of sandals that, they were useful when we went to the desert, which was one night, but the other 2 weeks they weren't really. And I feel that these are the ways in which we bring those rituals back, and we think about, it's not a matter of showing off, and it's not a matter of being superficial, it's a matter of respect. It's a matter of, you gave me the privilege of being able to enter your space, your house, your event. The least I could do is to respect you through these kind of things. So I don't know, I brought this not because I wanted to look beautiful. I brought this because I wanted to bring a design by a designer in Senegal who does everything for a reason. And I think it's also very entangled with the kinds of things that happen over here. And that's how I like to think about myself in this world. I don't want to think that my passage here is random and superficial. I'm aware that my impact may be very limited to a small circle, but I still want to make it meaningful to me.
Beautiful.
I just want to add about the costume thing that we have lost a little bit here. I've been they told me they shared with me a lot of wisdom in some point, and they told me you have to dress the color whatever you want to connect to. I don't know if that has sense in English. So you will wear green if you want to talk to a tree. You will wear gray if you want to talk with the rain. So the color and what you're wearing, like if you're wearing flowers, if you're wearing birds, if you're wearing whatever, it's to connect to the other. And we do that like as societies, but we have lost the conscience of it. You know, it's like implicit. Okay, I'm gonna put this for coming here.
But I would argue that here in England they love costumes and they do dress appropriately for each occasion. I think that this is a country that still puts up
I would disagree with that.
Yeah, that could be a whole controversy. But listen, let us
So they
open
like
up the
putting
room.
costumes every day different.
Oh, well, fancy dress is not a costume. I mean, it's
But they
different.
do have lots of protocols about to dress for each occasion. So
Yeah, but
No, I mean-
anyways, yeah.
To some extent, to some extent,
Yeah.
it's different.
Yeah. No, definitely, and that's part of the ritual on the everyday, isn't it? Like, doesn't exclude anyone from trying it, and some people still do. But listen, let us open the room for a couple of questions. If anyone has any burning ones that they want to do publicly, then I do a short closing remark, and then the floor is open. There's wine. Let us consume it and chat. Okay? So are there any? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question actually. It's very interesting what you were talking about. And actually you summarized it, what I was thinking about respect, no? Because I see you here sitting, talking about so much knowledge, indigenous, traditionals, and I'm a researcher, so it comes to me all the imbalance of powers that you have. When you are doing your art, when you are doing your research, when you are dealing with other artists too, like you are representing an institution, a university. You are in England, they are from the south, they are local artists and they are using other kind of instruments, no? Or you are also working with migrants, different kind of experiences and people. So how do you balance these powers, no? Because avoiding to be patronizing also, and this unbalance that you definitely have, ethically thinking, no?
Who wants to? Yeah, you wanna Tere and then Estrella?
I would say that my approach in at least from my Neo Norte perspective has always been, I speak about like the collage curation, and in a way, in each edition of Neo Norte, I try to incorporate elements from indigenous, Western, and folk, because I'm working a lot with the identity of Latin America, but I try to put them on the same level, and not with a label, if it makes sense. Because once I had an artist that I sent him the project, and he said, "Oh, there's something missing in your project because there's no indigenous artist." And I said, "That's not true. Every edition of Neo Norte has had indigenous artists. The only thing is that I'm not labeling them as indigenous artists." And I think that there's sometimes like this, which I find it very patronizing, that you have to put him like, that basically if the indigenous artist is not doing something very like traditional, then it wouldn't be indigenous art, and that's not true. There are indigenous artists who want to work in a contemporary way as well. So that's why I think it's about treating with respect again and giving a space in the same level.
Yeah, thank you for your important question. This is an area that fascinates me, and it requires ongoing work, ongoing self-reflection, ongoing informed activism that never really ends, because it's a process, right? And one of the projects that I was working on last year with partners from different parts of the world, so there were people from Canada, Brazil, Senegal, and the UK mainly, various film festivals, African film festivals, and African film festival researchers involved in this project called Decolonizing Film Festival Research in a Post-Pandemic World. We are working on the outputs at the moment. And it was a project in which we were inviting people to be much more self-reflexive about their positionality as a starting point in that process of decolonizing research methods. And then thinking about building reciprocity practices. This idea of giving back as well, that I absolutely loved from the work of the person who would later be my PhD examiner, Hélène Nevo-Kringelbach, who is of mixed heritage, including Senegalese and who had written about dance circles in Senegal. An excellent book where she has really insightful, thought-provoking reflections about methodology. So I will invite you to read that, because she really inspired me in the work that I have been doing with regards to that. I first went to Senegal in 2012. I have been very lucky and privileged to have a passport that allows me to travel easily to different parts of the world. I have a Spanish passport. And when I went to Senegal, I felt that I was not there as a tourist. It was a place that really hit me, because being as well from the south of Spain and having studied cinema for like 5 years, I had never been shown an African film. I had to come to the UK to SOAS to study African cinema. And then when I went to Senegal and when I started to watch these films, and when I worked there as in the cultural section of a newspaper, I finally found everything that had been missing in all of that higher education in Spain. So for me, there were several missions as a person in this world. If I was in the education sector, on the one hand, it was to shift that mentality of teaching people how to in Senegal. I wanted to help my people in my side of the world to understand better their cultural heritage, richness, and creative industries. So that was one mission. But the other one was to make sure that my work wasn't just read here or applied to the UK, or I wanted to make sure that I also intervened in the sector. Very recently, for example, I wrote a report for EUNIC, which is the European Union National Institutes of Culture, about it was a diagnosis of like a cartography of festivals in Senegal, what they are strong at, their weaknesses, challenges, opportunities, and recommendations of how to best support them. I was paid very little for that, and I was super busy, but for me that's already rewarding, because it is a way to give back, to make sure that that research has an impact. Beyond those actions, or collaborating, co-curating, inviting people over, engaging in these kind of practices and contributing to this reciprocity, I feel there is an effective investment that is huge. No one pays for that kind of investment. You have to find your own space in universities, which are really colonial structures, to do that. But I refuse not to do that, not just because I'm not paid for that. If I have to do less, I will do it, but I don't want to be in a world that is not collaborative, that is not moved by care, kindness, and all of that. But it is true that it leads to exhaustions in many cases. So I feel that it is great to be in these spaces, it is great to share. You could tell us what you do as well, and together we could come up with stronger cases, because I also feel that, I want to feel that I do advocate for some of these structural changes by sharing resources, by sharing reflections, or by trying to prompt change that are within the structure.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
just like to give it a closure, I think power relationships are challenging always, like no matter which field. Even us as an artist, we can disagree, we can like fight, we're passionate, and I think at the end, like, you have to ask yourself like the purpose of it, and just to understand the purpose of the other one in your life. So, and that's a very simple this kind of like this play of when you're a kid and you are ting, I don't know how to say it, like a balancing thing, and sometimes one is up and you have to be down, and that's okay, and then sometimes it's gonna turn. And I think like if you're conscious of it, it's easily, because no matter if I have been working with migrants and the president, like and and they have like the same kind of human structures as you, and we can all have mistakes, we can all be right sometimes.
But the president has more mistakes.
Obviously. Obviously.
I want to add something, sorry if I'm interrupting. I just want to add something. When you were referring to power relations, I also thought about linguistics. So I am Spanish, I speak French as well, but I also learned Wolof, which is the language in Senegal. So even though I am not super fluent, I understand, I can respond. Maybe for a deeper conversation I switch to French, but it really allowed me to interact, especially on an everyday basis and with people, and to be in spaces in ways that people were much more comfortable with. And only the fact that you will have some basic intermediate level is really acknowledged and valued over there.
And I guess that's key. Like I think like the biggest power dynamic that has been applied, the whole process of colonization and decolonization is through language. Like in Latin America, in Bolivia especially, this think of we got a right, everything by right. When Spanish people came, they started to do everything by right and to divide the land by writing. So you now have to have this paper that says something is yours when it's not needed, right? And through language, a lot of violence has been committed. And I guess, like in a way, I'm kind of hopeful of AI in that way, because it's gonna help us to overcome this gap and to understand better each other. And for example, I always say, like, I haven't read the Quran, because I don't know, like, how to do it. And if I read and translate, probably I'm gonna understand something, but not in the deeper way. And I guess, like, many problems in the world relates to that. Like we don't fully understand. That's it. And when we will able to understand each other, it's going to be amazing. A lot of bureaucracy is going to be gone, and hopefully we're going to be a little bit more comprehensive with the other ones.
Oh, thank you. That was really beautiful. Are there any other questions around?
Right, listen, let us better, do you wanna?
Yeah, I think you wrapped it quite, powerfully, your point of understanding deeper. And I think as artists, and us, as part of the audience, we have the responsibility to go even deeper, especially when it comes to the understanding of other cultures in the world and what the richness that they have, and we seem to be losing it. And I think we have a huge responsibility to try and rescue that and help them because the way things are at the moment in South America, Latin America, the respect, the value for the past, pre-colonial, is really going downhill. And,
but I think that speaking about communicating a language, there's a very beautiful coincidence that you have selected this building of Bush House today.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you noticed, but in the entrance it has a message that says, "To the friendship of English-speaking peoples." So I think it's beautiful that we've been actually sharing and speaking about language and communication.
Yeah, and doing whatever we want with English. Which is great.
Listen, now thank you so much, Jessica. First, before I forget, remember there are performances. The actual thing is happening tomorrow on Saturday, so this is my segue into inviting you to that. Everything is over there. You can check it on your own time, but essentially it's tomorrow in the evening in the Conway Hall, which is not far from here, just a few blocks north. And on Saturday, it's a bit of an early one, so there will be an exhibition from 11 to 4. and a performance itself happening from 11:30, if I'm correct, yes, 11:30. That one will include fabrics and textiles for deals, so please do, I won't say anymore, not to spoil it, but please come along. It's going to be really beautiful. Yes, and just as a closing remark, I would say, yeah, let us remember there's a different project going on based on what has gone wrong before that. And that project seems to be coming from a series of stems that we identified here, right? Or let's say a few fibers that are intertwining here. That has to do with the ritual, the intuitive, the bringing together, and I would say an element of interconnection as well. So you said, I don't know, maybe my impact is little, but you never know, because this is something that, well, the Wayu people in North Colombia, they have this character called Warekeru, which is the spider, which is very similar to Anansi in West Africa, which tends to be the wisest god. And of course, it's a weaver. And the interesting thing about weaving is that you never know what any particular fiber connects to. So you might be thinking that you're just moving a small fiber, but you don't know what that fiber is pulling up there. So I would just leave you with that. Now let's open it up so we can talk to our speakers directly, but before that, please join me in an applause for this amazing.